Indoor Matters with Damien and Sarah.
Welcome back to Indoor Matters, where we tackle what matters to your indoor health. I'm Damien, and I'm excited to be back with Sarah, our indoor environmental expert.
It's great to be here.
Before we dive in, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, Sana Service, Dubai's only indoor environmental health quality management company. They've been in the game since 2009, really focused on making our indoor spaces healthier and safer. They do it all from air and water testing to surface analysis. If you're at all concerned about your home's health, give them a ring at 04-321-5505 or check out their website, www.saniservice.com. And don't forget to mention Indoor Matters for a discount on their fantastic indoor science testing services.
It's great to have companies like Sani Service looking out for our well-being, especially with all the unique challenges of living in Dubai.
Absolutely. And speaking of Dubai, let's talk about our infamous climate. It's hot, it's humid, and it can be a breeding ground for mold inside our homes. It's ironic, isn't it? We crank up the AC to escape the heat, but we might be inadvertently creating the perfect conditions for mold to thrive.
It is a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? We're trying to stay cool and comfortable, but those cool surfaces in our homes are magnets for condensation. Think about it. Warm, humid air hits a cold wall and boom, you've got water droplets. And those tiny droplets over time are like a welcome mat for mold.
It's like we're accidentally setting up a mold buffet.
You could say that. And it's not just about the obvious places like bathrooms and kitchens. The real problem is when moisture gets trapped in those hidden spots behind walls, under floors, even in our furniture. It's a silent invasion.
And even more so in these new energy-efficient homes popping up all over Dubai, right? They're designed to be airtight, which is great for saving energy, but not so great for natural airflow. It's almost like we're trapping the moisture inside.
That's a great point. These energy-efficient homes are fantastic in so many ways, but they do require us to be more proactive about ventilation. If we're not careful, that airtight construction can actually work against us, leading to poor indoor air quality, and you guessed it, more mold.
So it's like we're trading one problem for another. We solve the energy efficiency issue, but create a potential mold minefield.
In a way, yes. But the good news is that we're not powerless in this situation. There are things we can do to combat this. And it all starts with understanding the role of ventilation.
Okay, let's talk ventilation. What exactly does that mean in the context of preventing mold in a Dubai home? Do we have to leave our windows open all day and let that scorching heat in?
Thankfully, no. While opening windows for short periods can help, especially in the cooler months, it's not a sustainable solution in Dubai's climate. We need something more consistent and controlled. And that's where mechanical ventilation comes in.
Mechanical ventilation. So we're talking about fans and vents and things like that.
Exactly. There's some brilliant solutions out there that can help us achieve good ventilation without sacrificing our comfort or our energy bills. One of the most effective, especially for these airtight homes, is something called mechanical ventilation with energy recovery, or MVER for short.
MVER. Okay. Sounds high-tech. What's so special about it?
Well, imagine this. You have a system that constantly removes stale, humid air from your home and replaces it with fresh, filtered air from outside. But here's the clever part. It does this while maintaining your indoor temperature. So you're not losing all that cool air you're paying for.
So it's like having a constant supply of fresh air without turning your home into a sauna.
Exactly. MVER systems use a heat exchanger to transfer the heat from the outgoing air to the incoming air. It's like having a built-in air conditioner and dehumidifier all in one.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing these MVER systems aren't exactly cheap. What if someone's on a tighter budget? Are there any other options?
Absolutely. MVER is a fantastic solution, but it's not the only one. We have other tools in our ventilation arsenal. Something as simple as extractor fans can make a huge difference. You know, those little fans above the stove or in the bathroom.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty familiar with those.
Yeah.
They can get quite noisy, though, can't they?
Yeah. Some can be, but the newer models are much quieter. And the beauty of extractor fans is that they target those high moisture areas right at the source. They suck out that humid air before it has a chance to spread throughout the house. And many of them come with humidity sensors now, so they automatically turn on when moisture levels start to rise.
So they're like little moisture-busting ninjas working behind the scenes.
Exactly. And then we have another option, which is passive ventilation. These are things like air bricks and vents that are built into the walls or skirting boards. They don't require any electricity, just the natural movement of air. It's like having a built-in breathing system for your house.
So even when we're not actively using fans or AC, these passive vents are constantly working to keep the air flowing.
That's the idea. Now, while passive vents are great on their own, they're even more effective when combined with other ventilation systems. It's like having a multi-layered defense against moisture and mold.
It's all about working smarter, not harder, right?
Exactly. And speaking of working smarter, even with good ventilation, we need to think about air circulation. We want to avoid those stagnant pockets of air where moisture can build up and mold can take hold.
So it's not just about bringing in fresh air, it's about keeping it moving throughout the house.
Exactly. Think of it this way. Good ventilation is like opening the windows to let fresh air in, while good air circulation is like turning on a fan to keep that air moving.
Okay, that makes sense. So what are some strategies for improving air circulation in a Dubai home? Should we all become interior designers and rearrange our furniture?
Well, furniture placement does play a role, but let's start with the obvious ceiling fans. They're lifesavers here in Dubai, not just for cooling, but also for keeping the air moving and preventing those stagnant zones.
I'll admit, I've always loved ceiling fans. They add a bit of charm, and that gentle breeze is so welcoming, especially after a long day in the Dubai sun.
And they're incredibly effective at distributing cool air evenly throughout a room, which helps to minimize temperature variations. And remember, those temperature variations are what lead to condensation in the first place.
So ceiling fans are a win-win. They keep us cool, they add a touch of style, and they help prevent mold. What's not to love?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, about that furniture placement, it's a small thing, but leaving a bit of space behind furniture and skirting boards can make a big difference in air circulation. It allows air to flow more freely, even in those often neglected corners.
So no more pushing the sofa flush against the wall.
Got it.
What else can we do?
Dehumidifiers are another great tool in our arsenal. They actively remove excess moisture from the air, preventing it from reaching that dew point where condensation occurs. It's like having a moisture vacuum cleaner.
These sound pretty powerful. But are they practical for everyday use in a Dubai home?
They can be, especially if you have a particularly humid room or if you're experiencing condensation problems. And nowadays, you can even get smart dehumidifiers that monitor humidity levels and adjust their operation automatically.
So it's like having a little moisture control robot working for you.
Exactly. And speaking of working behind the scenes, there's another factor we need to consider, one that most people aren't even aware of: air pressure. You see, the air pressure inside our homes can actually be different from the air pressure outside, and this can have a big impact on how moisture moves around.
Air pressure inside versus outside. I've never even thought about that. How did that affect things?
Well, imagine this. You have a tightly sealed home with higher air pressure inside than outside. What happens? That higher pressure can force humid air into those cooler hidden spaces we talked about earlier, like behind walls and under floors. And when warm, humid air meets a cool surface,
Condensation galore. It all comes back to condensation.
you got it. So managing indoor air pressure is another crucial piece of the puzzle when it comes to preventing mold, especially in these energy-efficient homes that are so common in Dubai.
This is all starting to make sense, but I'm wondering, how do we actually manage air pressure? Do we need to install some kind of pressure gauge in our homes?
No need for gauges. There are some very effective and practical ways to regulate indoor air pressure and ensure a healthy balance. One of the best solutions is something called a balanced ventilation system.
Balanced ventilation. That sounds interesting. What does that involve?
Well, these systems are designed to ensure a stable indoor air pressure, preventing it from getting too high or too low. They do this by carefully balancing the amount of air being exhausted from the home with the amount of fresh air being brought in.
So it's like a perfectly choreographed air exchange, ensuring that everything is in equilibrium.
Exactly. And another key aspect of managing air pressure is the strategic placement of exhaust and intake vents.
I'm assuming we're not just talking about randomly poking holes in our walls, right?
Of course not. The placement of these vents is crucial to maintain that balanced airflow we're aiming for. We want to avoid creating negative pressure zones, which can actually suck moist air in from outside.
So it's like designing a carefully orchestrated airflow system for the entire house.
Precisely. And finally, we can't forget about sealing those sneaky gaps and leaks that can disrupt the airflow.
Oh, right, those little cracks and crevices that let in drafts and dust. We have our fair share of those in Dubai, especially in older buildings.
Exactly. But it's not just about sealing everything up tight. We need to be strategic, allowing for controlled airflow while preventing external humidity from sneaking in. It's like finding that sweet spot where everything is in harmony.
So it's a delicate balancing act between keeping the good air in and the bad air out, especially with Dubai's desert climate and all the dust we have here.
You hit the nail on the head.
This is all incredibly valuable information. We've covered how condensation forms, how energy-efficient homes can sometimes trap moisture, and the critical role of ventilation, air circulation, and even air pressure management. It's a lot to think about. But I'm curious, are there any simple everyday things we can do to make a difference?
Absolutely. Even small changes in our daily routines can have a positive impact on our indoor environment. Things like taking shorter showers, using extractor fans, and being mindful of activities that generate moisture, like cooking and laundry. We'll dive into more of these practical tips after a quick break.
Sounds good. We'll be right back with more insights on indoor matters. Don't go anywhere.
Indoor Matters with Damien and Sarah.
Welcome back to Indoor Matters.
Where we're exploring the fascinating world of indoor health and discovering how seemingly small things can make a big difference in our well-being, especially here in Dubai.
Exactly. Before we went to break, we were talking about those simple everyday habits that can help us create a healthier indoor environment, especially when it comes to managing humidity in a place like Dubai. You're about to share some more of those practical tips.
Right. We were discussing how overwatering plants can add to the humidity levels inside. Something else to keep in mind is that some types of plants naturally release more moisture than others. So if you're aiming to keep humidity down, it might be worth choosing plants that are known to be a bit on the drier side.
Interesting. It's not just about how much we water, but the types of plants we choose. What about other hidden sources of moisture we might not even realize are contributing to the problem?
Think about the everyday chores that involve water. For example, washing dishes. If you're washing by hand, make sure to dry them thoroughly before putting them away. And if you have a dishwasher, consider running it later in the evening or at night when the humidity levels outside are usually a bit lower.
That's a great point. I often run the dishwasher right after dinner, but I can see how shifting that to a later time could help. What about things like mopping the floors?
Mopping is another one that can really add moisture to the air. If you need to mop, try using a damp mop instead of soaking wet and make sure to ventilate the area well afterwards. Open the windows, use fans, or even turn on the AC for a bit to help dry those floors quickly. In Dubai, a quick blast of AC can often do the trick.
So it's all about being aware of how much water we're using and making sure there's enough ventilation to dry things out. What about those unexpected sources of moisture, the ones we might not even think about?
Those are the sneaky ones. One that often gets overlooked is leaky pipes or plumbing fixtures. Even a tiny drip can release a surprising amount of moisture over time.
It's like a slow, silent leak that's adding to the humidity without us even knowing.
Exactly. So it's a good idea to check under sinks and around toilets regularly to make sure everything is dry and in good working order. And while you're at it, take a look at your windows and doors too. Make sure they're sealed properly to prevent any leaks or drafts.
Especially here in Dubai, where those hot, dusty winds can really find their way in.
Absolutely. And speaking of the outdoors, another thing to consider is your air conditioning unit. Those units produce condensation as part of the cooling process, which is essential for us to survive in this heat.
Oh, right. I've definitely seen water dripping from AC units. What's the best way to manage that?
Just make sure the drainage pipe is clear and functioning properly. You don't want that condensation backing up and creating a damp environment inside the unit, which could lead to mold growth.
So regular AC maintenance is important, not just for keeping cool, but also for preventing mold. It's all connected.
It is. And while we're on the topic of maintenance, don't forget about your ventilation systems too. Those MVER systems, extractor fans, and even the passive vents need regular cleaning to ensure they're working efficiently.
It's like giving our indoor air quality team a regular tune-up to keep them in top shape.
Exactly. And this might seem obvious, but regular cleaning in general is crucial. Dust, dirt, and debris can accumulate on surfaces and provide a food source for mold. So vacuuming, dusting, and wiping down surfaces regularly can go a long way in preventing mold from taking hold.
So basic housekeeping is actually a powerful tool in our fight against mold. I like that. But what if, despite all our best efforts, we do discover mold in our homes? What should we do then?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll be addressing in detail in our next episode. Stay tuned because we'll be back with more valuable insights on indoor matters.
It sounds like we've got a lot more to unpack when it comes to tackling mold. So until next time, stay healthy, stay informed, and stay cool.
Welcome back to Indoor Matters, where we're giving you the know-how to create a healthier and more comfortable living space, especially here in Dubai, where the indoor environment can really impact our well-being.
You're right. Before the break, we were discussing that dreaded M-word, mold. You were about to give us some advice on what to do if we discover this unwelcome guest hiding out in our homes.
Right. First things first, don't panic if you do find mold. It's more common than you might think, especially with Dubai's humidity. The important thing is to deal with it quickly and effectively.
Okay. No need to freak out. What's the first step we should take?
The first step is to play detective and figure out where the moisture is coming from. Remember, Mold can't grow without moisture. So if you're seeing mold, it's a sure sign that there's a moisture problem that needs fixing.
So it could be a leaky pipe condensation buildup or something else entirely. We need to get to the root of the problem.
Exactly. Once you've identified the source, you can take steps to fix it. Maybe it's as simple as repairing a leak or improving ventilation, or perhaps it involves adjusting some lifestyle habits like the ones we discussed earlier.
So we're not just covering up the mold, we're actually solving the underlying problem.
Precisely. Now, when it comes to actually removing the mold, the approach depends on how widespread it is. For small patches of surface mold, you can usually handle it yourself with a good mold-killing solution and some elbow grease.
So a bit of DIY mold removal.
Exactly. But remember safety first. Wear gloves and a mask to avoid inhaling those mold spores. And always make sure you're working in a well-ventilated area.
Got it. Safety gear is a must. What if the mold is more extensive or in hard-to-read spots?
In those cases, it's best to call in the professionals. A qualified mold remediation company can properly assess the situation, safely remove the mold, and recommend ways to prevent it from coming back.
So sometimes it's better to leave it to the experts who have the knowledge and experience to handle it correctly.
Absolutely. And when you're choosing a mold remediation company, do your research. Make sure they have good credentials and are using safe and effective methods.
Great advice. This has been an incredibly insightful conversation. We've covered everything from the science behind condensation to practical tips for preventing and tackling mold. I feel like I've become an indoor environmental health enthusiast.
Well, you've certainly absorbed a lot of information today, but you're right. The key takeaway is that creating a healthy indoor environment, especially in Dubai, is an ongoing process. It's about being mindful of our habits, making those small changes, and addressing any issues that pop up right away.
You said it perfectly. It's about taking control of our indoor health and making our homes true sanctuaries. And on that note, we've reached the end of another informative episode of Indoor Matters. Thank you so much to Sarah, our amazing indoor environmental expert, for sharing your knowledge and practical advice. And of course, a big thanks to our sponsor, Stanny Service, for their dedication to healthier indoor spaces. Don't forget you can reach them at 04321-5054 or visit their website at www.sannyservice.com and be sure to mention Indoor Matters for a special discount on their services.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found this episode helpful. We'll be back next time with more fascinating discussions on everything related to indoor health. Until then, stay healthy, stay informed, and stay cool.